Hey guys, hope you're well. Wanted to go over an article I came across this morning or maybe last night. I think it's kind of on everyone's mind, and the topic is all of President Biden's key executive orders in one chart. So, what does President Biden have on the agenda? What is he going to do in his first, I don't know, call it 20 days, 100 days in office? So these are the objectives, it looks like, or the executive actions. So let's just go through these. And my goodness, all right, geez, I didn't realize there were that many of them. Oh, goodness. And I don't know, something about executive orders just don't really sit well with me. But all right, let's go through these so we can understand what they are. And then I'll give you any feedback or editorial I have on each. Re-engaging with the World Health Organization. No comment. Oh, create positive cerveza sickness response coordinator. I love these. Whenever the government comes out, and all presidents do it, they create some sort of task force. Like, oh my gosh, the president's really getting serious about it now because he or she has created a task force, as if that has any positive effect or any positive attributes whatsoever. And one thing you'll notice when the media outlines his objectives or actions, they state them as if they're going to just naturally come to fruition, as if the intention of a law is just means that that's going to be the end result, that there are no unintended consequences whatsoever. If President Biden, if his intention is to create a response coordinator to eradicate the cerveza sickness, well, that's his intention. So obviously, that's what the task force is going to do. When you and I both know that, as Ron Paul says, usually the opposite of the intention of the government or the law is actually the result we get in the end. They're also going to rejoin Paris Climate Agreement, which, listen, I'm all for clean air, but to think that just because we're part of some sort of agreement really changes anything is just, I think, nonsense. It's just kind of childish. Revoke permit for Keystone XL pipeline. Pause energy leasing in ANWR. Do you own oil? If not, might want to think about it if it gets down into the 40s or into the 30s. And you say, well, George, this just shows that there's not going to be demand for oil. It's not about demand. It's about supply. And with all the ESG movement and everything that we're going to see from the Biden administration, and maybe even the mainstream narrative, is going to be very negative on oil. Remember, Jim Cramer said something to the effect that oil is uninvestable. So that means less capital going into new production, which means the supply goes down. And even if you think demand's going down, most likely the supply will go down a lot faster, which means prices still go up. Whenever we're thinking about supply demand, most people get hyper focused on the demand side of the equation. They forget the supply. Ask agencies to extend eviction foreclosure moratoriums. I'm sure just asking them, and they'll be like, oh, well, of course. I mean, we weren't going to do it, but if you asked, then, well, of course, we'll make it happen. Here's another one. Ask Education Department to extend student loan pause. Launch an initiative to advance racial equality. End 1776 Commission. Not sure what this is, but listen, you may have a certain opinion on how much racial inequality we have in our society. I'm not here to debate that with anybody. But to think that the government can eradicate racial inequality is laughable. The government can't do any of this. The only thing that can improve our society from a standpoint of any type of equality, for that matter, is going to be the individual, you and I, our neighbor, and our community. It's not going to have anything to do with a government or any government initiative. Revoke order that aims to exclude undocumented immigrants from census. You know, this, I just don't understand the argument in favor of undocumented immigrants voting or being part of the census. I mean, I'm not Republican I dislike both parties equally. You guys know that, but I just shouldn't. When we're talking about voting or census, I mean, don't we want just American citizens in that? I don't know. It seems kind of commonsensical. Preserve, fortify DACA, which helps dreamers. I don't know what DACA is, but I can tell you that if you believe that any politician on the right or left has good intentions, you are definitely a dreamer. That's for sure. Require masks, distancing on all federal property and by federal workers. See, this is just pandering to their constituents. Where are you going to require a mask? Yellowstone National Park? That's really going to help reduce the cases of cerveza sickness? Come on. This is just window dressing just to make people feel good. It makes me ill. Reverse travel ban targeting primarily Muslim countries. Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't really think we should target any specific country as far as a travel ban, excluding, if you want to talk about cerveza sickness, that's a completely separate topic. But as far as the objective, I think we should let people into this country, or we should grant citizenship based on merit, not someone's culture, not someone's ethnicity, but what they can do for the people that are already in the United States, how they can benefit society at large. And the fact of the matter is there's some people that can flat out produce more than others. And we should welcome people who can produce into our country. And we should maybe think twice about people that are going to detract from the economy or might not have as high a probability as of creating more economic output on net balance. I'll say it that way. I'm trying to say it in a way that's as politically correct as possible. Stop construction of border wall. Okay. I mean, the border wall is utter nonsense anyway. I spent a lot of time in Nogales, Mexico, and there are so many tunnels going underneath and to the other side. A wall is just as ridiculous as making people wear masks on federal property. It doesn't do anything. It's just pandering to constituents. That's it. Combat discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity. Again, again, uh, how is the government? The government cannot do this. It starts with the individual. Combat discrimination. How, you know, what's amazing is the arrogance that the politicians have to believe that they actually have this much power, that they have so much power by just sheer will and intention and just setting up the right task force. They can completely eradicate discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. And whenever they use the word gender identity, you know what that means. That means we're going to get a whole long list of words that we need to incorporate into our vocabulary that only apply to 0.000000000001% of the population. And you may be someone that thinks that's a good thing, and that's fine. I respect that, but I respect your opinion, but I don't agree with it. And my rebuttal is always, listen, we have $27 trillion in debt. We are running $5 trillion deficits. Our economy is so structurally flawed. We've needed 0% interest rates basically since 2008. The Fed is increasing their balance sheet by trillions of dollars, just propping up what little of an economy we have left, creating huge asset bubbles and social unrest. Do we really want to focus on gender identity? To me, it's like your house is on fire. You wake up in the middle of the night, you smell the smoke, the roof is blazing, everything is on fire. And instead of worrying about putting out the fire, you worry about the toilet that's broken. Might be a problem, but before you focus on that toilet that's broken, you might want to worry about the fact that your entire house is on fire. Just an idea. Modernize and improve regulatory review. Okay. And harsh and extreme immigration enforcement. See, and this is this is where I have a problem, because whenever politicians use words that are so vague that they could be interpreted pretty much anyway. What does harsh mean? Extreme? Who's defining what extreme is? Extend protection from deportation for Liberians. Okay, our house is on fire. Just remember that. Revoke certain executive orders concerning federal regulation. Okay, I see. Normally I'd say, well, great. That sounds like they're repealing a lot of, or pulling back a lot of federal regulation. I think in Biden's case, he is talking about executive orders that decreased the amount of regulation. Therefore, he wants to revoke those, increasing federal regulation. Freeze any new or pending regulations. See, he's a huge fan of bigger and bigger government, just so long as it's his bigger government, and not Trump's bigger government. But Trump was guilty of the exact same thing. He loved big government, just so long as it was Trump's big government. Fill supply shortfalls in fight versus cerveza and defense protection. Okay. Increase FEMA reimbursement to states for National Guard. No comment. Establish cerveza pandemic testing board. Okay. I mean, see, this just, why? Like, how is that going to benefit us? Are not enough people being tested right now? I mean, it just seems like this is code, or this is just the beginning of them using something as an excuse to create more lockdowns. Hopefully, I'm wrong. That's just my first impression when I read that. Bolster access to Cerveza treatments and clinical care. Improve collection analysis of Cerveza data. Okay. I mean, I definitely don't want that in the hands of the government. How about we have independent universities and doctors, virologists, epidemiologists do that? And why don't we get the data? Why don't we read it ourselves and make decisions on what we think is best for our families? Don't need the government for that, in my opinion. Mount vaccination campaign amid goals such as you know what? I'm going to give him credit here. I'll give him credit for taking the approach of convincing people instead of forcing people. At least up until now, and who knows what happens in the future, but at least they're not using force and physical violence to get this many people shots. At least up until now, they're talking about doing campaigns to try to promote their views. And I might not agree with their views, but I do agree with the approach of trying to promote them as opposed to forcing people to do them using the threat of physical violence or putting you in jail or something, making it illegal. Provide guidance on safely reopening schools. Again, I think that should be up to the school. OSHA guidance for keeping that should be up to the employer. Require face masks at airports, other modes of transit. I mean, they're already required. Again, pandering to constituents. Establish, here we go. I knew they had to use the phrase at some point in time. Establish a Cerveza health. What? I just saw task force. I didn't read the whole thing. Establish a Cerveza health equity task force. Huh? How does equity play into that? I hope I'm going to go out on a limb and assume they're saying something, and I hope I'm wrong, but I heard something to the effect that when they roll out the shots, instead of giving them to the people who statistically are most vulnerable, such as people that are 80 years old in nursing homes, they were going to roll them out to neighborhoods that they considered disadvantaged, let's say. And I sure hope it doesn't come to that. And I hope that's not what they're saying, because that would be really tragic. When you look at if you're someone who believes in the shot, and I would say there's merit there. The downside is all the testing, without getting into, without putting the tinfoil hat on. If you take it at face value, the downside is it just hasn't been tested that much, and therefore, if you're someone who's 20 years old and extremely healthy, you statistically would have more downside or more risk by taking it than not if it was just that isolated instance. But when you look at someone that's 80 or 90 years old, then I again think it should be up to it should be left to their own decision-making process. But I think that statistically there's a good argument for that. But for just rolling it out based on neighborhoods due to the composition, the demographic composition of that neighborhood is just, it's wrong. It's wrong. If you're going to roll this out, if you believe in it, roll it out to the people that really need it first and foremost, for heaven's sakes. The people that are on the front lines and the people who are statistically vulnerable. Support international response to Cerveza, restore U.S. global leadership. Okay. I mean, all right. I don't know that any country is looking at the United States for leadership, quite frankly. I've spent a lot of time in other countries, and this may shock a lot of Americans, but people in other countries really don't think about the United States that much. They don't pay much attention. They pay about as much attention to the United States as we pay to Turkey or Colombia or South Africa. Ask agencies to boost food aid, improve delivery of STEMIs. Well, we know what that means. That means central bank digital currency. Restore collective bargaining power for federal workers. Yeah, there's one. So I don't think labor unions should be banned. I think that that's a product of the free market. If it's a product of the free market, that's fine. People should have the right to group together. But when it comes to government, it's a whole completely separate deal. Because, I mean, Schiff has talked about this. Milton Friedman has talked about this extensively. But there's no checks and balances when it comes to labor unions in the government, because there's no incentive to pay them less. It's just more and more and more. And that's one of the problem with all of these task forces and agencies is once they're set up, their main priority is to stay alive. Their main priority is to exist. So, and increase their budget annually. So they're not going to spend money efficiently if that means that they're going to be under budget, because the next year they would have less money to spend. So they're always going to spend as much money as they possibly can, even if they have to waste it, to make sure the next year they have an increased budget. And they're also going to promote narratives that mean that they're going to have value in the future, or that their organization, that their agency is going to continue to exist. They don't want to put themselves out of a job, right? If they have a task force on minimum wage, well, if there was minimum wage, that task force would be out of business. So that task force or agency is incentivized to say that there's a need for a minimum wage. That's just a random example. You can fill in the blank. Boy, those are my thoughts. 23 minutes. I didn't think I'd go that long. I didn't think that there were that many executive orders. But there you have it. That's what Joe Biden's game plan is. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think on the topic. Let me know in the comments below. I will see you on the next video.